Hello everyone and welcome to this video where I'm going to be going through some tips and tricks on programming and making your electrical system such that your creation can benefit. Now this is something that I've talked about in the past, but as we have so many new people joining us all the time, I do want to reiterate this because honestly this is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned since starting Stormworks and took the biggest hit because of it. What I'm talking about is the electrical logic. So if you go to any one of my new creations, you'll find electrical logic that looks just like this. Whether it is a plane, a boat, car, train, whatever, they always come out and root out of the main breaker in the creation. And you can see one here for the truck as well inside the engine bay. And they kind of reach out and go from those points. You can even find this on my largest creations, and even when there are multiple breakers, I always have them stemming from there. Now, the way I always do it is I make the hot side electric A, so whatever is coming out of the battery, and then whatever I'm plugging into, in this case generator power, in this case drivetrain, in this case critical, those are all coming out of electric B. So they give you the option to turn the breaker on and off. And what you avoid with doing this is a cross contamination that can destroy your creation and make trying to solve issues with the electrical system a nightmare. My flagship, one of my favorite ships, unfortunately does not have this system. So as you can see, I followed a system where I kind of plugged in pump to pump to pump, and then this one goes up here probably to like a light or small connector, which goes to this thing, which goes to this. Yes, try to solve this, and if you find something not working in this system, good luck fixing it. So I learned through pretty much experience, and unfortunately some of my older creations still use this. I mean, to go through and unplug every electrical circuit in this and replug it would just not be worth it. But learn from my mistakes and do yourself the favor of properly linking things, just like this helicopter is here, to the breaker or to a relay. Doesn't matter, same principle, but don't go and create this crazy type of spider web that you see here. Trust me, you'll thank me for that later. Yes, there are different ways of doing it, but none have impacted me and to a detrimental amount, such as plugging in the electric like you saw there. Now the next thing is you may build a creation such as my old version of the RX-99, and you may come across a quickly draining battery. Take a look at that. You park this thing for too long, it's gonna be drained. And sure, every creation, even real life vehicles and things, have battery circuits that drain over time, but look at this. This is not going good. It's going to 97% here soon and dropping. Whereas my new version, look at that. It's pretty much still 99.9%, and yeah, it's slowly draining, but you could leave this for a long period of time before it becomes problematic. So what did I do to fix it? Well, I'll show you on the path. Pretty much, the first thing that you'll want to do is find the source of what is causing your battery drainage and isolate it. Now that is a bit of a daunting task because you don't want to unplug one thing at a time. For example, the radar, jump in, see if it's fixed it, and go back and forth and so whatever. That just takes forever. So here's what I recommend. The first thing I do to try to isolate it is see where the issue is coming from with your breaker. So if you take a look at this, when it's on, the battery is draining very quickly. When it's off, it drains very slowly. And that just might be like the light on or something in the cab. So if I even close the door, it might slow down. But you can now see that it's on your electric circuit B. Now again, if you didn't do the spiderweb method of connecting things, then you'll have a pretty clean way of seeing what's attached to your B circuit. Now this is a small enough creation that you could probably find out what it is pretty quickly, but imagine you couldn't. Imagine you're looking at this and it's a massive ship and you're like, what on earth is causing this drainage? Well, I'll show you how to find out. But before I get into all of that, I just want to tell you, in a helicopter, most likely it's going to be your gyro or gyro. It also can be any number of sensors such as distance sensor. Now these things are constantly running, constantly measuring, and in this case I have one here. I have another one on the bottom of the helicopter here attached permanently, mind you, to the electrical circuit. So that is causing drainage. Of course, you may get things like cameras, but I've not had that much issue with those. And then also if your engines or your radiators are constantly on, you may want to check to see when it's turned on. In this case, we do have a microcontroller. So there are a couple of easy things. Also pivots. Pivots will drain your batteries. So will any type of movement. If you have like a crane or something constantly moving, that would also drain your battery. So those are just some tidbits, some tips of things to check first. But let's pretend we have to isolate to see where even it's coming from. The first thing I'd recommend doing is chopping a part of the creation. And you kind of chop things until you narrow down where on earth your battery drainage is coming from. So in this case, we'll take off the whole top of the helicopter, spawn it in, and you could see it's still draining. So maybe not as quickly, but nonetheless it is draining. So if we hop back into our workbench here, you could try to unplug things, but I just start to delete things. You could also, like I said, keep going like this. I mean, you could take off the back half of the helicopter. Let's see if taking off this back half will stop the drainage. Stopped. So I did also remove the radar, as you remember. And that was a bit of a shotgun approach, so you'll want to bring your regular creation back in and start to cherry pick things to find out what is causing the drainage. Now you can just go ahead and start deleting things as I'm doing here. So let's try with all the gyros, cameras, radars deleted, and let's spawn this in and see what happens. So with electric B and A, it's the same. So electric A continues draining. So now we know that we've actually taken care of all the drainage on our B circuit. And at this point, I recommend you bring it back in and take a look to see if there's things that you didn't have to delete. So for example, let's just only do our gyro and only do our radar and distance sensors, because we know those are for sure causing lots of drainage. Like that, those are just ones I know. So if we unplug those things, come back here, take a look at that. So we've now reduced it all the way down. If you want to stop it even more, you got to stop your pivots. For example, look at my dashboard here. It did not engage the pivots, and with the pivots not engaged, we're pretty much not losing any battery. So be careful when you're using your pivots, because they may cause a lot of that issue. For example, if I return them back, they have to align that dashboard and can be the cause of some of this drainage on our circuit A, as you can see here. If you have a pivot that is constantly draining your battery, there's a couple things you may want to do. First of all, I removed the max power, but also it could be draining the battery because it's trying to fight whatever it is hitting. So in this case, look at how slow it's draining, because it's no longer smacking into the dashboard here or into this wall. When you get clashes like that, the pivot may constantly be trying to fight it, to counter it, and may end up draining a large amount of battery. So you can see now when the pivots are in action, yeah, the battery drains. When it's not in action, look at that. So be very careful if you're using perma pivots, things like this where it's always kind of leaned. You'll want to be careful, and you can fine tune it. So like now I proved that somewhere between 3 and 2.5, so I can go 2.7 or whatever. And yeah, you do have to go back and trial run it. So look at that. We're back to draining. So it's hitting that up there, And if I stop it maybe a little more, I mean, what if we try 2.6, for example? We know 2.5 worked. What about 2.6? Nope. So 2.5 it is. It seems that 2.5 is the number we're looking for, and then you don't get that drainage. So the battery is now happy, but what do you got to do? Well, you got to return all these systems back onto the creation. So don't save this version, obviously. Spawn in a clean version, no changes, and then make these changes. So we know 2.5 is the max we can go for the pivot there, and then we have all these different things. Now, the cameras themselves may not be draining as much battery, so I'm going to leave them off for now, but what I will put is a relay. Now, the nice thing about relays is that they're automatic systems. I'm just going to put it here, and I'm also going to put a threshold. And I'll explain that threshold in a second, but the relay is a nice system because you can just plug in things and it's pretty much an on-off switch that connects the circuit. Okay, what are we going to do? I'm pretty sure the gyro is the biggest thing here, so I'm going to plug that into my circuit B, and I'm going to plug my radar. So radar and gyro are in circuit B. Circuit A can go to my breaker B now, so it's still obviously attached to the breaker. And then our relay state. Now, yeah, you could turn this to a key if you have a key on your vehicle. We don't for this helicopter, and I actually like it that way. So I'm going to make the threshold gate turn on that relay, and the value to test, in my case, is going to be my throttle. Now, I know that I have a little throttle gauge back there, and I'm going to say whenever the throttle is between 0.2 and whatever, that then my system's engage. So also, I do have to put in those pesky distance meters, so we don't want that one. Instead, we want it plugged into B, and then we have a second distance meter somewhere down there that's hidden. Yeah, this guy. We'll plug that as well into circuit B. So now, by changing the pivot and by removing certain things and putting them on the relay here, let's see what happens. Take a look at that. So just by that one or two differences, and obviously having a nice clean setup of electricity on your vehicle, you're able to prevent unnecessary drainage. Now, where could that be coming from? Well, it still could be coming from these pivots. I mean, they're not perfect. We have all these other pivots, but I'd say that's such a low fraction that your electricity is dropping by that it's pretty much negligible. So with this type of instance, you really don't, it doesn't really bother your creation, and once it's throttled up, our gyro's on, our cameras are on, and everything's back to being happy. Now, actually, I do think in this instant here, I didn't even remove my camera, so you'll see here that when we shut down the helicopter, our throttle is back down to 0. If I turn this, our camera's still on. So this helicopter is draining very little battery, and that's with the cameras still on. And I'd probably leave it that way because you may want to run the camera while the creation's off. Alternatively, your displays as well, you can unplug or have them only on when you're nearby with a proximity sensor, player sensor. That's also another useful way to save battery, also save lag in your game. Lots of different tips. Hopefully this video was useful to you. I do enjoy revamping my creations. Like I said, this one here needed some revamping, and finally we have it. So a nice clean display setup, a much more useful interface, and I'm going to be going through all of my helicopters and making these types of changes just because it really does help when it comes down to, you know, usability in Stormworks, and especially it can't be denied that I haven't learned skills since this thing had come out. But that said, I really do like the shape, so most likely I'll be making only minor changes to the shapes of these things. I did put a lot of effort and thought process into their shapes, so no need to redo that, and therefore it's just going to come out as an updated creation rather than as a brand new Mark II. Though, I will say that I do have an intention of making more helicopters of different styles under my brands, so keep in mind that that may come out too. So thank you for watching, stay tuned for more, and as always, happy Stormworksing everyone. See you next time.